All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Granted. We are back with another episode of Granted.
Hey guys, welcome back to Granted.
As you may be able to tell, this is a new setting. This is a new person. Okay, we've just entered a new time of our lives. So welcome back to another episode of Granted. We have officially been in Tennessee for almost a month now.
Basically,
4 weeks. This is the take 2. Yeah, we're going.
Okay,
Are you
wow.
ready?
Yeah, I guess I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Granted. Today, I have my first athlete interview here. I'm going to let Nick introduce himself, but it's an absolute pleasure to have him here. He came straight from practice to be here, so I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nick Simons. I'm a redshirt sophomore on the swim and dive team. I'm a swimmer, and I'm from Lake Oswego, Oregon originally. Lived in Las Vegas for a year, and yeah, here now.
I didn't know you lived in Vegas for a year.
Yeah, so during COVID, Oregon shut down pretty big for swimming and really everything. And it became a pretty big issue. I had just started to really hit my stride in swimming, and my dad had an opportunity to move for work, and the one of the number one teams in the country for swimming is in Vegas.
Yeah.
And, I talked about it with my coach in Oregon, and she and I, decided that it would be best for that year to move to Vegas so I could get the best training opportunities possible for Olympic trials in 2021. And it worked out really well for my parents. They're really happy there. And I only lived there for a year. I actually went back to Oregon and lived with my grandma for a year for my senior year so I could finish up with my home team again because I missed them so much. But yeah, so actually sort of from two different places, which is pretty cool.
That is sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, so you moved to Vegas before you graduated high school.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. And then it sounds like your coach was a pretty supportive person then.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about your coach, because I've talked to so many kids that they end up quitting their sport because of coaching issues.
Absolutely.
And so when you get the right coach, they can push you to the right place, like how she did with you, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So my coach back home, Emily, she is literally the most special person in my life. The most, influential person I've ever met. She's been basically my coach since I was 8. She's the head coach of my team, the Lake Oswego Swim Club.
Mm-hmm.
And she really built it from the ground up. There were less than 100 members when I joined when I was 8 years old. And by the time I left, there were over 300. And they're having to really manage pool space because there's so many people that want to join the team.
Yeah.
And she's grown it into one of the best program in Oregon and one of the best programs in the whole country, which is really incredible. And she was always in support of me. There were a lot of times where I didn't enjoy swimming, not because of, coaching or anything, but just, there's burnout with a lot of, athletes as kids. And, sometimes, you're not really feeling your best. And she was always supportive in that. And that was the reason that I'm here today. And that is the reason that I'm here today. And her support to let me go. She didn't know I was going to come back my senior year. I didn't even know I was going to come back, but she let me, go free.
Yeah.
Because she knew if she had kept me in Oregon, I wouldn't have reached my full potential because I wouldn't have been training as much.
Right.
And that switch to go to Vegas, to be able to train for that year leading up to Olympic trials, led to some really awesome accomplishments.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been possible without her letting me, go free, which is really, really special. And I think a lot of coaches would have been selfish and would have said, no, you're staying.
Right.
But she thought that it would be the best for me to blossom as a swimmer. And honestly, I don't think any other coach in the whole country would have been that open to do that. And it's really, really special. So
yeah, she sounds like an amazing person.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
I'm curious because you mentioned the Olympic trials, but we're talking about you in high school.
Yeah.
And you're already talking about the Olympic trials.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I was actually going to talk about later, but we can talk about now, is the work that you put in as a high schooler that got you here. Because, everyone sees the people with the athletic bags and they see all the gear, but they don't realize everything that you had to do to get here.
Yeah.
And so you're already talking about training in Vegas just for swimming. Talk about what that year looked like.
I mean, that was probably the hardest I've ever worked for anything in my entire life. So, I mean, we knew the Olympic trials was coming up. They delayed it from 2020 to 2021. And so I would have been 16. I would have just turned 16 at the Olympic trials in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But that extra year gave me an extra year to grow, an extra year to train. And then obviously COVID hits in 2020, right before the original Olympic trials started. So then we make the move to Vegas, and one of the most elite teams in the country. They're called the Sandpipers in Nevada. and they really, really put in good work. And so I actually switched to be on online school. So I was a homeschooled for my last 2 years of high school, because then you can dedicate all of your time to swim basically. And a lot of double training. So 5 to 7 a.m. on Monday, Tuesday. I forget how many days a week it was, but I was up at 5 to 7 a.m. and then in the afternoon it was typically 2:30 to 5.
Yeah.
Plus an extra weight session every couple of days during the week. We doubled up probably 5 times a week with swim, and then we probably did like a quote unquote triple with like the lift a couple of times a week. But yeah, a lot of work was put in. A lot of those swimmers you'll see are the top swimmers in the world. One of my teammates, Ilya Karun, he swims for Canada and Arizona State. He just won an NCAA title last year in the 200 butterfly and won 2 bronze medals at the Olympics in the 100 and 200 fly.
That is amazing.
And he was he was one of my training partners in high school. And I mean, it just goes to show you that dedication can really, really bring you a long way. And yeah, nothing but support for those guys in that team for what they do. They really, really put in good work.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about like it's very different from high school when you're going to a specific state just to train for the sport. You're switching online. The other thing I want to ask about is how do you take care of your body? Like everybody doesn't understand like how you have to be as an athlete, because I've been there, not where you were, but I understand that like being an athlete, you have to take care of your body. If you're doing 2-a-days, 3-a-days, how do you first of all not burn out, and second of all, how do you take care of your body so you're ready to go for the lift way back in the afternoon of the day after 2 practices?
Absolutely. I mean, and it's the same for every athlete. Like no matter what level, recovery is the most important thing to do on the outside of the pool, both physically, but in my opinion, more importantly, mentally.
Yeah.
It's really, really important. And like I said, it goes for any type of athlete. It goes for someone that even just goes for an hour walk a day. Like you really need to set up your body and your mind for these type of things, because you can burn out really, really quickly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, the really, really important thing is just making sure I keep my my mission statement first. Like I want to know why I'm showing up every day to work, because I mean, like you said, those 2-a-days, those 3-a-days when you're including the lift can get really, really tiring. So you just want to make sure that you keep that at the forefront of your brain. You want to know why you're showing up every day so you can find that smile when you're in the darkest hour of your practice.
Yeah.
And then physically speaking, I mean, the big thing is just like rolling out, like, you know, stretching, getting a massage if you can, if you have the ability. That's one of the main like pluses of being an athlete in college is here. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have like a massage schedule. So I get my massage on Tuesdays, and it's like, that's one of the huge benefits of being a D1 college athlete at an SEC school like UT. So yeah, I had an ability to get a leg flush out today after lift, and it made all the difference. Like afternoon practice, we did a lot of fast stuff off the blocks. And without that, you know, massage in the day, I would not have been as snappy off the blocks and as good on my turns. So that type of stuff, like massaging, getting, you know, rolling out, like massage gun if you have the ability to have one, stretching, ice bath. The ice baths and
baths are
contrast.
crazy.
So if you hit like ice bath and then hot bath in between, if you like swap the two, they call that contrast. And that can be really, really effective for like, you know, cycling out your lactic acid, which is really, really important for recovery.
Yeah. I think what I remember is like when you're going from a cold to a hot, it's like something with blood flow as well, right?
I honestly don't know.
I don't remember, but I was always told not to do it, but then I've seen athletes do it.
Yeah, so all I know is you want to end on cold. That's like the one thing I know. Scientifically, for some reason, you got to end on cold, and it sucks because you you get out of that hot and you're like, I could just be done now. I could go home. I could be warm, get in my sweats, like go to bed. Nah, man, you got to end on cold.
You got to go back
freezing,
to the ice.
and then you can't even take like a hot shower afterwards. You got to keep that cold.
Oh.
I don't exactly know why, but it really does do a lot and helps you.
Yeah.
And so like during meets, especially, we have at like home meets, we have a hot and a cold tub like outside the pool, like literally 20 feet away from where we train. And do meets. And so it's really, really important to get that in when we have the ability to. So yeah, that's really, really important.
Okay. So let's say, you know, right before a meet, do you guys use those pools to get your body prepared, or is that kind of a day before type of situation? Or
so it's mainly after you race that you want to do that. Like before the race, I feel like it'd be a little bit too much of a shock on your body, but like after you race, like just to make sure that you get that recovery in after you're done, like competing. I'll remember freshman year, the first day of our invitational meet in November, which is like really the first chance you have to qualify for NCAAs. I swam like 4 events on one night. And it was like a quick turnaround after every race. And I just remember I cooled down a ton after I swam. I swam about 1,500 meters afterwards to, kind of flush the body out. And then I wanted to do some extra. My athletic trainer was like, you could go do some contrast. I remember it was so cold, but the following morning I was ready to swim again and I felt like fresh.
Yeah.
And so doing that after a long day of swimming like that, 4 competition events in one session, and then hitting a long cool down in the water, followed by the contrast in the baths, it's really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's so interesting because you wouldn't have been able to tell that from an outside perspective.
Absolutely.
Know what I mean?
Yeah, no. The only people that would have been able to tell would have been probably my parents sitting in the stands waiting for me to say goodbye after they'd seen me that session.
Right.
They were waiting and they were like, why is he taking so long? It's because that process takes forever. And so all the fans leave, but everyone that's like really dedicated will still be in the water. And something that I've always strived to be is the first one in the water when the session starts and the last one out, because that's when you know that you're really getting in your good warm up and your good cool down.
Yeah.
And you're very focused on your process the entire session.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And we can talk about all the success you've had, but it kind of reminds me of it's kind of the Kobe mentality that he always had. I remember there were stories of when he would go in the gym and if someone was there before him, he would get mad at that and he would stay hours after that person left. And that's kind of what you're doing. Like first one in, last one out. Like that will give you so much success. So that's pretty impressive. The other thing I'm curious about is there's a couple of recovery methods that I didn't hear you mention. Like, do you ever use the blow up leg thing?
Okay, so that's the one I neglected to mention. Okay. I use those almost every day.
Oh, do you really?
So we have in our athletic training room, there's a bunch of tables that you can lay on. And under each table is a set of the Normatec leg sleeves. We got the short, medium, and long ones because obviously we got some tall guys, some short guys. So we've got all the different sizes. And I hit those almost every day. Yeah. They're the best.
They
love
do
them
feel nice
so much.
for sure.
You crank them all the way up to 7 on the power, and you sit there, and by the end it hurts for a little bit, but then once you step out of them, you really do feel a difference. So I hit those almost every day.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
The other one is I've only done it one time, but cryotherapy.
I have never
sitting
done
in the
that.
cold cage. It's weird, but it feels great after. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I've never done that. I've always wanted to.
Yeah.
So that's something I definitely want to check off the bucket list.
Yeah. I don't even know if that is more of I think it is for athletes because the only thing our high school had a name for was soccer. So the soccer team had a deal with a recovery place, and they had cryotherapy there.
That's super
cool. So I got
to
try it one time, and
that's sick.
It's a weird experience.
I would love to try that at some point.
You should. Yeah, I'm sure it would probably benefit you too a lot.
Absolutely.
So, well, that's good. Well, let's move on to let's go back to the Olympics again, because you're a 16-year-old training for the Olympics, but is that the first way to prepare for the Division I level, or what was the goal to get into the Olympics, to qualify? Talk about the goals there.
Yeah, so in high school, I mean, my main goal entering high school was what if I could make the Olympic trials? So the Olympic trials meet is obviously where you qualify for the Olympics, and it's the top 2 make it. And my goal was just to make the meet. So when I entered high school, it was what if I could make Olympic trials? I'll be a sophomore in high school when they happen. Let's see what could happen. Obviously, COVID ended up delaying that. However, that was my goal heading in. Now, the Olympic trials are 50 meters, so that's the Olympic size swimming pool is what people call it. And the college is 25 yards, so it's a little different. I mean, it's actually a lot different. The distance, obviously, you're going to be swimming 110 yards approximately for every 100 meters. Plus, you're flip turning a lot more in a yards pool because it's 25 versus 50. Personally, in high school and still today, I prefer the long course pool. I'm a better swimmer on top of the water. You have a more opportunity to swim underwater when you're doing the short course yards.
Okay.
It definitely prepares you in terms of atmosphere for sure. The Olympic trials that's a meet that has an atmosphere that I don't think anything else could match, because a lot of Americans describe it as the hardest meet in the world. Most Americans that make the Olympic team consider it a harder meet to swim at than the Olympics, because a lot of the times the top 8 Americans will be faster than the top 8 at the Olympics, just because you can't take more than 2. In recent years, there's been a lot more parity across the world. The top 8 in the Olympics would be a lot faster, but back 30, 40 years ago, the top 8 in America were the top 8 fastest. And so if you were top 2, you were guaranteed a spot on that podium.
Crazy.
It's gotten a lot faster across the world nowadays, but still a lot of people say that the Olympic trials is a much more stressful experience.
Yeah.
And so for me, I just, at first when I entered high school, it was what if I could make the meet? And then I remember I qualified when I was 16 at the right beginning of my junior year of high school, because COVID delayed the process for me qualifying too. I didn't get to swim like out of trials, like to qualify for trials until my junior year. So my junior year, and I qualify, and I hit the qualifying standards by quite a bit, a lot more than I thought I was going to, and my coach too.
Yeah.
So the cut was 202.99 in the 200 back, and I went 2:02:00:45. So I got it by about 2.5 seconds.
Yeah.
And I remember just being so shocked. Actually, the first event I qualified in was the 100 back, which I honestly thought I had less of a chance in. And the cut was 56.59, and I went 55.51. And so I got it by over a second, and I'll never forget it because the meet circumstances were terrible. It was at this, it was at a pool that had really, really shallow water, and I had to swim in an outside lane because my seed time wasn't very good, and I didn't get to warm up before the race. Like, I warmed up 3 hours before, but because of COVID, they weren't allowing people to like get in the warm up pool. So, I mean, I just remember I was sitting there with my coach, and she was like, just, you've got this. Just, you know your process. You have the ability. And I just remember touching the wall, and like, I was so shocked. I looked up at my coach. She was a very, very reserved woman, the most stoic person I know. And she was even like hooting and hollering, getting super excited. Amazing. I had 2 teammates up in the stands going absolutely crazy. There were only 50 people in the building because of COVID. So there was like a bunch of officials basically and like 4 people in the stands, and they were freaking out.
That's awesome.
So after that meet, it became, not just, so now I made trials. Like, I hit my goal. Now it's how well can I do? And so Olympic trials is one of the coolest meets in the world, because world swimming, or one of the coolest meets in America, because world swimming, they do preliminaries, semifinals, and finals. Typically, domestically here in America, it's just preliminaries and finals. So typically it's just top 8, and then you go swim at finals. But at Olympic trials and at every like world level meet, it's top 16 make it to semis, and then top 8 out of the top 16 after semifinals make the final. So that gave me a really, really good shot of getting a second swim at trials. It was, oh my goodness, I'm a high schooler that could get a second swim at the Olympic trials. Like, what the heck?
That's
what could happen here? And so actually the week after I hit my trials cuts was when Oregon shut down for the second time during COVID. And that's when my coach went, you've got to go somewhere, because she realized, oh my God, we could really, the potential we could really do something here. And so that really influenced the following, 6 to 9 months heading into trials. We moved, 1,000 miles away to Las Vegas. I joined this new team, met a whole bunch of new people. And my coach, Michael, and I on Sandpipers, we got a lot of awesome work in, and we did some great things. And there was a lot more opportunity for long course training in that 50-meter pool, because our home pool was 50 meters. So we had like a chance to swim 50 meters every day. Instead of, we'd only be able to train 50 meters in the summer back in Oregon. So that really allowed me to blossom as a long course swimmer even further than I already had. And that atmosphere was really, really good for me. And by the time I reached trials, it became, all right, top 16, last Olympics took 55, but we knew it was going to be faster, because every 4 years, we call it swimflation. It gets so much faster every year. So we knew I had a feeling it was going to take around a 54 mid long course meters, 100 backstroke. And then in the 200, it was going to be right around 2 minutes. So my best time in the 200 was going to be right around making it back, but the 100, I was going to have to do a lot better. And so leading into Olympic trials, leading into Olympic trials, I talked about it with my coach, Michael, at Sandpipers. It was like, all right, like, let's see what we can do. I'd been training pretty well leading in, but I always hit this thing called taper blues, like a couple weeks before, like a big meet, when I'm like in the middle of my taper. And I remember I hit a pretty big taper blues about 2 weeks out. And I remember Michael was just like, Nick, just trust the process. Like, you're going to be fine. Like, it's going to be great. And we get to Omaha like a couple days early, because there were a couple girls on my team that were Olympic hopefuls, like going to make the team probably. So we got there a little early. We were so ready. Our whole team we were dialed. And then the 100 back was like day 3. And I remember my coach, he didn't want to let me watch any of like the finals swims at the meet, because he was like, it's gonna rile you up too much. Like, it's gonna dial up the energy a little too much. Like, we need to stay calm. I remember I watched one finals swim early in the meet. it was the first final swim just so I could see the atmosphere.
Right.
But then we kind of shut it off, and it was the best decision ever. I deleted Instagram. Like I really, really, cut all the distractions off.
Yeah.
And that's why our team was so successful, because a lot of people go to that meet and they get really distracted by the bright lights and the fireworks and the fire. Like they shoot these like fire cannons. It's so cool. But they were like, it's super hype, but if people get dialed up, they get riled up.
Yeah.
And they get way too stressed out about their swims. It's just the pool is 50 meters.
Yeah.
It's the same pool that you're swimming in. It's
Right.
just because it's in a basketball arena doesn't mean it's any different.
Right.
And that's like what we kept trying to reiterate. And by the time the 100 back rolled around, I was prepared. I wasn't riled up. And so there's like this staging area before you go up to like go swim. And I just remember being in that staging area, and that is the most tense room that there's ever been in the entire world. I mean, it is like the Situation Room in the White House.
Dude.
It is like, you are like tense. And I'm like sitting in a row of 8 guys, and we're like getting ready. And then they stage us, and like we're going up like the tunnel in a basketball stadium to a giant pool with, thousands of fans watching for the preliminaries at the Olympic trials. Like, I had turned 17 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy, right? And I just remember it's 8 of us standing in a line, and I'm standing there, and I turn around and I like look at the guys. I'm like, does anyone else have to pee right now? And everyone just starts laughing, and the tension was like broken. And it was so nice because that, like I said, the tension can like get people.
Yeah.
And all the guys were like, yes, oh my God. Like, cause you have to stage like 10 or 15 minutes before your race. And we were all hydrated. So we're all just like, we have to pee. We all got ready for the race. And then, we get to the pool and, jump in the water, and I swim my race. And all I'm thinking about is, my coach always told me as a kid, never look at the scoreboard while you're swimming. Never look at where your time is, just swim your race. And the amount of times I disobeyed that rule and looked at the scoreboard anyway, I did it a million times. And all I could think about is, Emily's watching me. Don't look at the scoreboard, especially because there's a Jumbotron with me swimming on it. Like you can see yourself. And so I'm like, don't look. And I'm swimming my race. And I remember I flip turn and I feel so good. And I come off the wall, and then I see the Jumbotron in front of me, and I see someone's way ahead of the field. And I'm like, I know it's me, but don't look. I don't know if it's me though. So don't look. And I just swim the race, and I go into the finish, and I just touch the wall. And I knew it was the swim. I knew it was. And I like looked up at the scoreboard, and for a split second, I see my time, and it was 54.52. And I was like, I had cut a whole second, and it was right around where it would take. And at that point in the meet, it was the number one time anyone had swam through the first 4 heats. And I'm like,
that is amazing.
And dude, I hit the craziest celly, dude. It was the best. It was the best moment. I smacked the water. I was like, let's go. And then all I hear is this loud noise from up in the upper deck somewhere. And I know my parents flew out like a bunch of my family.
Yeah.
I think I had like 12 or 15 people in the stands just to watch me.
Yeah.
And I hear this noise, and I'm like, oh, that's my dad.
Yeah.
And so I point up into the crowd, and I didn't know where my parents were sitting. Like that was like, I was focused on my race, so I didn't know. But I pointed somewhere in the stands, like up in the upper deck. And it was so funny because after the race was over, like an hour later, when I got back to see my parents, my dad was like, you really pointed straight at me. It was like, you heard me. And I was like, no way. And it was honestly my parents, my brother, my whole family, we had family friends come out. My coach, Emily, flew out.
That's amazing.
Even though I wasn't even swimming for that team anymore, she flew out to come watch me swim, which is the most special thing. It was their swim too. It wasn't just me in that water that day. It was everybody. It was so much hard work and time and energy and financials put into this like great experiment. And then it became, okay, do I get a second swim? And so at the Olympic trials, there's there's another tunnel back down. And you walk down, and there's a scoreboard, but there's no there's no Jumbotron down there. It's just like a scoreboard, so you can see the times. And like the announcer's like, oh, well, Nick Simon's number 1 seed. And I'm like, oh my God, like what's going on?
Right.
Like the juicers are flowing now. Like the race is over. Now it's time. Now I can get a little stressed about if I'm going to make it. And one of my teammates and my coach come over, and they're like, Nick, like, that was awesome. Like, let's go. And I'm like, okay, now we just wait. Yeah. And, we watch the next heat. They go, no one goes 54. Like, everyone's over 54. And so I'm like, oh my God. The next heat goes, no one goes 54.5. Like, I'm still the top seed. And the announcer's like, top seed, still Nick Simons from heat 3. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? The next heat goes. No one beats me. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah,
I'm like, what is happening? I'm
Yeah.
like, this could actually happen. And so in swimming, they do this thing called circle seating. The final 3 heats have the top 24 people in them. And so the top, so they split it basically so that the number 1 seed's in the last heat, the number 2 seed's in the second to last heat, and the number 3 seed is in the third to last heat. And then it goes like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so that's how it's like circle seated. It's not just all the fastest guys in the last heat. It's like pretty rounded. So that like each heat, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 people that are beating my time. So they go through the first circle seated heat and about like 5 people beat me. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm 6th place at the Olympic trials. Like, I'm probably going to advance, but I just need less than 10 people to pass me up.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next heat goes and like 8 people beat me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I'm in like the worst position because there's a heat left. And these are the fastest guy and like the 4th fastest guy and like the 7th fastest guy in this next heat. So I'm like, I know some guys are going to beat me. Like, I'd have to get lucky here. And I'm like sitting in 13th and the last heat goes and I can't even see it. I can hear the announcer and I can see the scoreboard. And I'm here with my coach and one of my teammates and we're just standing there and we're just, nail biting. Like, please. They flip at the 50 and a bunch of people are ahead of me, but I'm a back half swimmer. So we're like, I could still make it. Mm-hmm. And we like watch them go and they all finish. And I'm trying to do the math in my head. Like, how many of these guys did I beat? How many people in the other heats? And I do the math in my head and I'm like, 17th. I'm like, mm-hmm. Dang it. And so I start walking away and I'm like going to go to the warm down pool. I'm going to change out of my racing suit, get back into like a Speedo to warm down and like get ready for the 200 back, which is in 2 days. And then all of a sudden I hear, oh my God, Nick. And all of a sudden one of my teammates comes running from across the hall and it's like 16th. And I'm like, oh my amazing. God. So they roll the heats afterwards and show the results. And I didn't look at it. I just used my own math in my head. And they came running over and I made 16th. And it was, I literally was like, I was about to cry. Like, I didn't know what to do. And I'm like so happy. And I don't know what to do. And like, it was the coolest thing. There were a couple teams like around our team and like in the staging area. And they all were like, yeah. And they didn't even, like, some of these people don't even know me, but every time you see someone have a big swim like that, like everyone gathers around. That's the cool thing about the swim community is everyone notices and they get really excited no matter what team you're on, no matter where you're from. And so that was really, really cool. And then, that was a really, really special experience that, I had semifinals later and I'm not going to lie, I did get caught up in the energy that night. Mm-hmm. And it didn't have as good of a swim as I did in the morning, but I made it, and that was what made me happy. And it was, like I said, it took a village. Yeah. It took my whole family and all my friends and all these special, special people in my life. And it made me proud, not because I swam that time or I made semis or anything. It just made me proud that all those people, were there and we all cared about something together. It really meant something. And it was really, really special. So,
that seems amazing.
Yeah.
So the top 16 made it to the semifinals and they cut it down in half.
So they cut that down in half to 8. I got 16th. Yeah. So I actually one person in the top 16 actually scratched, which means they decide not to swim it in finals. So one guy scratched. So I actually got put in a 15th position after the morning. Yeah. And then that night I dropped back down to 16th. But so then the top 8 go to finals, and then at finals, the top 2 make the Olympics.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep, yeah.
Wow, what a special experience, though. Yeah. It sounds like something that's uncomparable, like the arena, the way you perform, the family all being there. Yeah. Like, that's incredibly special.
It was without a doubt the most special experience, and I am so, so thankful to have had the experience and to have had the resources and the people around me to be able to do it, because without them, I wouldn't have even been close. Yeah. And it was special.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And then you talked about it takes a village. Yeah. So the other thing I'm curious about is, because every athlete's different. Some people have their parents really push them out of their comfort zone in their sport to the point where they don't really love it anymore. Talk about how you fell in love with the sport. How young were you? Because it sounds like your family, they were supporting you. They weren't forcing you.
Oh, my goodness.
And sometimes families force it upon their kid. So talk about how you grew up and how you learned to love it.
You could not have gotten that more right. My parents are the two, best supporters any young athlete could have ever had. And someday as a parent, I hope to be just like them.
Yeah.
So they were always supportive no matter what. They let my brother and I have every opportunity we ever wanted in sport, but they never pushed anything onto us.
Yeah.
And that was the most important part of it, because you know what? I tried soccer when I was in kindergarten, and it wasn't my thing. And they didn't, make me do. My dad, liked soccer when he was in middle school, but he never forced soccer on me because he liked it. And later I played baseball and I loved it and I was good at it, but it wasn't necessarily the best sport for me, like mentally speaking. I would get way too, frustrated.
Yeah.
And I really needed to find an individual sport.
Yeah.
And my dad, I think his favorite sport to watch is baseball, and my brother's favorite sport is baseball.
Yeah.
We're a baseball family.
Yeah.
But they weren't like, you have to do baseball. You have to figure this out. You need to be, they were like, let's find a sport that works for you.
Absolutely.
And for a while, so I was I was in between 7 and 8 when I, quit baseball permanently. But I at that time, I had played up onto some older teams. I had always played with my brother. I'd always practiced with him. So, I had always had a really, really good experience in baseball.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got away from it for a little while. And in that break, it was the summer, and there really aren't that many sports that go on in the summer in Oregon. And so I was doing swimming lessons, and I'll never forget, I was with 2 other guys in swimming lessons, and I needed to give my competitive energy somewhere. And so I need to win swim lessons. And so I was sprinting everything. And I had pretty good talent for it, just naturally. My dad was always a pretty good swimmer when he was young. And so I kind of got that a little bit. And, my parents had done a really, really good job kind of teaching me how to be in the water as a young kid. So I was doing really well in swim lessons. And at the end of the summer, my instructor, Jen, she goes, hey, have you ever thought about competitive swimming? You really, really have a knack for this. You should really try. And my parents are like, yes, individual sport. Let's do it. And I remember they were like, okay, there's this club called the Lake Oswego Swim Club. They train about 10 minutes away. Let's go get a tryout. And I show up, and I'm in board shorts and a necklace.
That's
no cap, or I do have goggles, but no cap. And I'm like, oh man, this is every novice swimmer shows up in this outfit.
Yeah.
Everyone goes through it. And I show up in that, and I'll never forget my coach, Emily, she's there.
Yeah.
And gosh, how old am I now? This is 12 years ago. So she's standing there, and I know somewhere inside she's sighing inside. She's like, oh, another one of these kids. Another one of these kids. She would not know. She actually she loves teaching from the beginning, but I always know that she's like, we need to get this kid in some real gear.
Yeah.
But I just remember she was very patient. She's like, all right, what strokes can you swim? And I'm like, I can do freestyle and backstroke. She's like, okay, do a 25 freestyle and a 25 backstroke. And I was like, okay. And I just remember that was the longest 50 yards of all time. I was trying so hard. I'm like, I got to impress her.
Yeah.
And I swim. And I swim the backstroke. And then she asked me if I could do breaststroke or any other strokes. I'm like, and I wasn't confident in it. So I was like, no. She's like, okay. So I get out of the pool, and she's like, well, we're going to put you in red group. And at the time, red group was what we call novice now, which is just the very, very beginner group. And so that was the coolest part about my experience is a lot of kids get put into swimming and they get put into a high level group right away. And then that's pressure immediately. But I started from the ground up, and that's how, I honestly think it's really good to be done is, you really learn everything from the base. So I started in that novice group, and worked my way up through the team. By the end of that year, I had made the state championships, medaled in 5 events, and had made it up to the top group for the 8 to 10 age group. And it was, it's that process, you can work your way up so quickly, just by learning it. And I think the best story that I have about that whole season is the day of the tryout, the day that tryout comes.
Yeah.
I remember I wake up that morning. It was a Saturday morning, I want to say. And I had to wake up pretty early, and I get up and I go downstairs and I tell my mom, I'm like, I'm not going. I'm nervous. I can't do this. And I tell my dad, I'm like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it. And I just remember they were so supportive. They weren't going to force me to do it. They were like, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to go. But they were like, you should. We just want you to go give it a try. If it doesn't work, if you don't like it, you don't have to do it, but just go give it a try.
Yeah.
And my mom made me scrambled eggs that morning. I'll never forget the meal. I had scrambled eggs and toast.
There you go.
And it gave me that good energy.
Yes, sir.
And that's when I was like, I'm ready. And I went and I was so nervous. But I did that 50. And, my coach Emily was so supportive in that. I felt like such a noob, honestly.
Yeah.
But the support, the support was all there. And that's what did it. And, throughout the next couple of years, I really started to progress in swimming. But I never felt any familial pressure. Never felt any of that familial pressure. Always just supportive. And do you want to do this? I was always yes. And if I didn't want to do it, they never forced me to.
Right.
And that's really, really important as a young kid, because if it gets forced upon you, you're going to get to those older ages and go, I hate this. I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
And you know what? Even though I had so much support growing up, there were times when I'd grown up, I didn't want to swim anymore. And there were multiple times where I took long breaks, long periods away from swimming. And that's why Emily was such a special coach, is she never forced me back into it when I needed a break. She always knew a 2-month break now is better for you at the end of the year than forcing these 2 months now. And at the end of the year, you're not going to want to go swim at the championship meet.
Most definitely.
And every season that I took a big break, I had success. And that is a huge testament to both my parents and my coach Emily growing up, because I know a lot of parents and I know a lot of coaches don't like to let their kids have that break. And there's this common misconception in swimming that every practice you miss, you need to make up 2 practices for. That was never a thing growing up. That was never a thing that I had to do. It was always, if you need that day off, I trust you. You know what your body needs. You need to listen to it. And my parents and my coaches always let me listen to my body. And that really, really helped push me along in the process of swimming. So, I always had the really, really good support. And I'm so thankful for that. Like you said, takes that village. And I was blessed with that village growing up. Yeah,
that's an incredibly special group of people that you had around you. And then you pair that with the work ethic and the competitiveness that you had, like 17 in the Olympic trials. Like, that's unheard of and incredible. So that's just amazing to hear about, honestly, because that's a perspective that no one really has, right? The other thing is, obviously, you were around, 8 when you had the tryout, right?
Yeah, I was 8, yep.
And you said that you had developed you had a talent for it. And there's something that's interesting about that. Like, all high-level athletes, I would believe, have a talent for it. There's something that you might be meant to do when you're born. It's kind of an interesting take, but maybe you were meant to swim.
Okay, so I've got a story for you.
Yeah.
So growing up, I grew up in Salem, Oregon, and there was this pool that we belonged to in Salem, and we'd go there a lot during the summer. And I'll never forget, my parents tell this story all the time. So I was a toddler. I was probably 1 or 2, and I just learned how to walk. And I was always running around, because kids are always mischievous like that, right?
Absolutely. And
so we would go to the pool in the summer, and I would get to the pool and run to the water because I loved the water so much. I literally sprint straight to the pool and I jump in. No matter if I had clothes on, no matter if I had shoes on, I would run and jump in. And there were multiple times growing up where my dad had to jump in the pool fully clothed to get me, because I jumped in the deep end and I didn't know how to swim yet because I was a toddler. And so they had to run and jump and get me. So I definitely had that magnetic pull to the water from a very, very young age. And it's like you said, sometimes you have that magnetic pull to some sort of sport or some sort of activity, or no matter what it is, some people just have that. And I think mine was always to the water.
Yeah, that's amazing, because it sounds like you had a calling for it. You were meant to do this. Seriously. But the thing that comes with talent is, I've had my dad tell me a lot of times about specifically basketball players, but people who have the talent, but they don't have the work ethic. And so then these talented individuals who could be, Olympic caliber, end up falling off the charts because they don't know how to work with it. They don't know how to work and deal with the talent. Have you seen and witnessed people in that position that have also had the talent but not the work?
Oh, I will not lie to you. I have had that has been me at times. I'll never forget. So I really started to hit my stride about 12 or 13 when I went from a pretty good regional level, state to regional level swimmer to one of the best in the country. Was when I was about 12 or 13.
Right.
And I really made that jump. And then heading into my 14-year-old season, I just assumed that would continue because I was naturally gifted, and I kind of neglected to think about how hard I was working at the time that matched with the talent level. And so, heading into high school, I kind of had this chip on my shoulder, like, I'm going to make it no matter what. Like, I already won all this stuff by, 10 seconds. Like, I'm still going to win even if I don't train hard. And so I skipped a lot of practice. I had really slipped into almost a depression that year, had a very low work ethic in everything I was doing. And I neglected to think about the impact that would have on my swimming performance and my overall well-being. And I really, I saw that affect my results at the end of the year. I mean, there were times when I would mouth off to my coach, Emily, and I'd be like, I'll be fine. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm still the best. And it was like that cockiness level that season got to me. And it was really, really bad for a lot of what I was doing. And I'll never forget all season, one of my biggest rivals, he's one of my best friends now. His name's Marcus. He now swims for Notre Dame. He's one of the best swimmers in the country as well.
Wow.
We had grown up swimming against each other, and at that time we were we were rivals. We were swimming the same events, and that season he worked his tail off to get better, and I didn't. And this previous season, I had beat him at our final meet of the season, and I just assumed that was going to happen again. And leading into the final race, I just, I was cocky, and we swam that final race, and he kicked my ass.
Yeah.
Sorry to the FA for me saying that, or the FCC. What is it? I forget. FCC. But he beat me, and I realized how much hard work really does go into it. And I'm really, really happy. I was really, really happy and proud for him, but I was really, really shocked and disappointed in myself that I had let that happen all season. I had watched, him get so much faster and just assumed that the same thing was going to happen to me. And that's, I think, the best thing about having a really, really close friend that's also a rival is it can really spur that positive training environment. And he lived about 2 hours away from me, but we'd race at a lot of the same meets. And that is really, really good to spur that competitive energy in that training environment, where you're at home and you're thinking, my friend's working hard too, so I can work hard and I can get there too.
Right.
And by the end of high school, we both finaled at junior nationals in our best event. And now he was school record holder last year for Notre Dame in the 100 back.
Crazy.
And, qualified for the NCAA championships. And I mean, we're two kids from Oregon. How the heck did we end up here?
Right.
And so I think that that example of myself really not training hard with the talent that I had was really, really obvious that season for me. And from then on, I almost never missed a practice for any reason whatsoever. And I trained as hard as I could because I knew, no matter how, good you are with talent, you could get outworked by someone with the same amount of talent and get crushed. Right. So that's just something to keep an eye on is you just need to know that, other people are training hard too. And that you can always do it. I mean, you always have the ability to. And that's why I it kind of leans back to what we were talking about at the beginning with the, you just got to make sure you keep that mission statement at the front.
Yeah.
Find a way to smile during your darkest hour. You got to find something that keeps you going.
Yeah.
And that season, I couldn't find anything to even get me there, let alone keep me going during the dark moments. And after that, I found that mission, and I've been continuing to change that as I'm growing up and finding different difficulties in the sport.
Yeah.
So that's really, really important. And I think that's what gets the most talented athletes that don't make it. The Jamarcus Russells of the world that have these crazy talents but just don't have the work ethic.
Right.
I think it almost is too scary. The amount of talent that you have, it's too scary. Like it builds up in your brain, and almost becomes too stressful. And so you counteract that by not working at all, because then none of the eyes will be on you anymore. And you almost counterintuitively work against yourself in that way.
Right. That's interesting that you say that about the most talented athletes.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that I'm curious about too is kind of to transition into your life here at Tennessee.
Yeah.
Like what does the day in the life look like for you? You came just from a practice, and you mentioned even in high school you're doing 2-a-days with lifts. Yeah. What has the schedule been like since the season just started?
Yeah, so the season started end of August, so we've been going almost 2 months now.
Oh, okay.
But our schedule is typically Double swim Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and single Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And the singles on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday have a lift. So it's double swim and technically a double workout, but it's a single swim with a lift on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And it varies depending on if there's like a meet during the week or, different things going on, but that's typically how it looks. And you can train up to 20 hours a week with the NCAA compliance rules. But that also includes team meetings and anything outside of the pool that the team is like, that is an official team event.
Right.
So the coaches have to be really, really careful to make sure not to go over that 20-hour limit. But yeah, so it's about a 20-hour swimming / lift week.
Okay. Yeah. But I'm assuming, because you talked about it, like your mission is very clear. But is there ever a time when you felt like you would rather be a normal student than have all of this stuff going on? Or do you just love it so much that it's never even crossed your mind?
So that's a really, really wonderful question. And I actually have a very complicated answer for that. Well, it's a very straightforward answer, but it's kind of complicated. So last season, I actually quit and retired from swimming. Completely. So I've struggled with a lot of mental health and depression, anxiety since a very, very young age. But it really struck me when I left home for college. And there's no better place to be covered for mental health in terms of both psychiatry, therapy, and sports psychology at the University of Tennessee. But I neglected to use the resources that were here my freshman year and had a crisis at the beginning of my freshman year. Actually had to go home for about a month and a half to really get myself back on track, and then came back to school, finished the season out, was doing pretty well mentally, but headed into the sophomore year, we had a tragedy strike our swim and dive team. And the following week after that tragedy struck our team, I got a concussion. And those two things mixed together, plus some other depression symptoms, led to me also having another crisis. And so I went home. And during my time at home the second time, which was a longer period, I talked it over with my parents and honestly pondered it every day and thought, maybe swimming is, causing me some difficulty. I was having some identity issues. Just, am I a swimmer or am I a person that swims? And I wasn't really finding myself as a person at the time. And it was a big struggle. And like you said, sometimes, you think, would I be better off as just a normal student? And so for the rest of that season and the year, I honestly quit. I retired. I told the team, I'm taking a step back and I'm retiring. Like, it's been awesome. It's been the best time of my life, but it's also been such a struggle that I need to take this step away. Yeah. And they were nothing but supportive. And I think at any other program, they probably wouldn't have been as supportive, but my coaches and my teammates were so, so happy when I said that I was doing what was best for me. And that is so, so special. Yeah. And so I actually spent probably 6 to 8 months just not swimming. I was a NARP. And I was living normal life. I got a job working at the pool doing commentary and helping with tech, like setting up meets, touch pads and stuff. So I still was sort of attached to the swim team a little bit, but I was on my own. I was getting paid. I was, living my life. I was doing things that I wasn't able to do on the outside of swimming. And honestly, it was one of the best times of my life. I blossomed as a person. I became, me, and I wasn't just a swimmer. A lot of times I would get so wrapped up in, I am what my results say I am. So if I win something, I'm happy. But if I lose something, I'm going to be so, so hard on myself. And it became, it became so difficult. And it really, really, hurt me in a lot of ways. And, about halfway during that break, I started to have little thoughts about, maybe I'm not done with swimming. Like, maybe I want to come back. But, I really wanted to spend that time to just be me for a while. And so I thought about it a little bit. And I'll never forget, I watched our team swim at the last chance for NCAA meet, which is your last chance to get qualifying times for the NCAA championships. And I watched so many of my teammates have awesome swims. But the thing that hit me most was how hyped up and how excited they were for each other. Yeah. And that reminded me that swimming isn't about your results. It's about the tight-knit community and the family that you have in swimming. I wouldn't have loved swimming if I didn't have Emily, my coach back home, or my teammates that were literally my family, basically. Or here, my coaches here are like my parents, and my teammates are like my brothers and sisters. And I realized that and went, man, what am I doing? I want to swim again.
Yeah.
And so I went to my coaches and I pitched it to them. And at first they were a little apprehensive, just making sure that this wasn't just a spur of the moment. Like I just want it for the results. And I reiterated to them, like, this is because I know that I can do something bigger than myself. And, they were like, well, you should go talk about it with, therapist, family, think about it for a while and then come back to us, because they wanted to make sure it wasn't just, a temporary thing. And that's so cool, because I think a lot of coaches would go, yeah, come back, practice Monday. But they were like, take your time. And I took my time and I came back in about a month and a half, and I was like, I think this is a good idea. And they were like, awesome. They were like, take as much time as you need. And I was like, awesome. Like, I'll come back at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall, and I'll be ready to go. And actually my first official practice was like at the very end of August. So I've only been back in the water about 2 months. But like I said, that mission that I keep talking about, and I talk about a lot with my coach, Rob, is really important to me. And that is, I'm here. This is my family now. These are the people that I care about. Like, I want to find a way to be happy with them every day. It's not just about results anymore. It's about that process and going through it with other people and helping people. Like, I can be a really, really strong leader. I've got a very, very strong voice. Like, I need to use that to be a better teammate for both them and myself, because that can really, really help me grow as a person and be myself without just being a swimmer. Yeah. And so, I think that happens to a lot of people, and I've been blessed with this opportunity to be able to live a NARP life. I went and did a half Ironman with my best friend.
Oh, amazing.
It was so hard. It was honestly the worst decision of my life, because I did not train hard enough. But I was able to do that. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do that in a normal swim season. And I started lifting like way heavier than I normally did, because I wasn't afraid about like, how is this going to feel in the water anymore? And actually that's translated so well into coming back to swim, because now I'm not afraid to, slap on some weight in the weight room and really go for it. Sure. So I think that strikes a lot of swimmers, and I've had this unique perspective to be able to go away from swimming for an extended period of time and really grow into myself. Yeah.
Okay. So all of this, the break that you took this was last year, correct?
Yeah. So this was last year. So this was my sophomore year.
Okay. Well, I think just from hearing the story, I think what I pick up on is you know yourself very well. Like, when you need to take breaks. That's pretty impressive, because a lot of people, they might stay in it, they might stay fighting even when they don't love it, and then they end up quitting. But you found a way to take the breaks that you needed for yourself, and now you're back full strength, ready to go again. Like, that's pretty amazing. And I just want to say, like, just from hearing your stories, it's amazing just the athlete you are, but also like you're here with me today talking about it. You're a super cool dude, so I don't think you should ever lose that from yourself.
I appreciate that so much. And I think that that's one of the main things that I feel is important for a student athlete and just a young adult, and everyone especially, is trying to learn to listen to yourself and to know what's going on. And I mean, therapy is like the most important thing in the world. And I will reiterate that to the day I die, is therapy and making sure that you are getting checked out for what you need is the most important thing that you could ever do for yourself. Mental health is so much more than people think, because it's not visible. Nobody knows. At the times that I've been struggling at my worst, I honestly looked pretty okay on the outside. But people need to know that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to get help. It's okay to take a break. If you need it, if it is a genuine need, you need it. Like, you need to listen. And like I said, my coach back home, Emily, she knew at times I would need those breaks. And at the time, I don't think I knew that it was because necessarily I had depression or was depressed, because it hadn't been officially diagnosed. But I think even she could tell when I needed these breaks, because I was burnt out and I wasn't feeling it anymore, and it wasn't good for me. Because if you force it, I mean, you're just going to continue to burn and burn and burn, and it is not good for you anymore. And so I think, taking breaks is really, really important no matter what you do. I see it in everything. I mean, even, schoolwork, people get way too worked up about it, and it can really ruin somebody. And sometimes if you ask for that help, you will get what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Right.
And so sometimes if you need that extra break, if you need that extra time, if you ask, the answer could be yes. You need to, be proactive and not be afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when we talk about, obviously, athletics, you talk about the 70-30 ratio. And I've always remembered that it's 70% mental and 30% physical. And the best athletes in the world have to do a ton of work just to keep their head straight when they're performing. But even just obviously with day-to-day life, just taking care of yourself mentally is one of the most important things in the world. So
yeah, I always joke that swimming is 98% mental and 2% physical.
That's even probably
because
more
swimming,
accurate.
I feel like, is like even more sometimes of a mental game because, a lot of times, you watch, Olympic races and stuff, and sometimes the best swimmer, like in terms of physical athletics, isn't the one that wins. It's the one that is so dialed in. I mean, my favorite example, Michael Phelps, 2008 100-meter butterfly at the Olympics. He was going for a 7th Olympic gold medal to tie Mark Spitz from 1972. And he goes into the race, the second seed behind Milorad Cavic of Serbia. And he goes up there and he swims the race. And the entire time he is losing until about literally an inch before the wall, he wins by 1/100th of a second. You got to look this up.
Yeah.
Maybe you could thread it in to thread
it
in. Because it is literally,
Yeah.
So he went 50.58 to 50.59 on Cavic. And literally that entire race, Cavic is the better swimmer, but Phelps just knows how to win and get his hand on the wall. And honestly, that's mental. He made a last second decision to take this half stroke into the wall. And that was that 98% mental beating the 2% physical was right there. And then the following summer in 2009, they go head to head again at the World Championships. Milorad Cavic had just beat his world record in the semis. He went 50.02 in the semis to break the world record. They go into finals next to each other. And the same thing happens again. Last 15 meters, Phelps passes Cavic on the last stroke, touches him out, 49.82 world record.
Oh my
And that
God.
right there, that was even more of an example because honestly, in that race, I think Cavic was better trained than Phelps. But Phelps just knew how to win, and he was so dialed in mentally at that time that he knew how to get his hands on the wall first. And I think one of the cooler things about that story is I'm talking about Michael Phelps being mentally ready, and he's one of the first people that ever kind of came out in the sport of swimming and said, I'm not okay right now. And that's really, really special to have literally the greatest of all time, honestly, in my opinion, greatest athlete of all time, come out and say, I'm depressed. I don't love swimming right now. I need to take a break. He retired for a while, came back stronger, and that's so, so important. You see it again with Caleb Dressel, the current best swimmer, most Olympic golds currently swimming. He took a break. He took a year off, came back, and dominated at the Olympics again. I mean, it's a perfect example of sometimes you just need to listen to your mind, and you need to take that time to figure yourself out because that's the most important thing. Swimming is only a small chunk of your life. Don't let it, ruin the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was a lot of heavy stuff. So if we want to end it with something a little bit lighter, I want you to tell me about your best memory that you've had. It could be during the entire course, which would probably be the trials, but even just your best memory here with this team and this family.
All right. So my favorite memory from my freshman year when I was swimming, my teammate Harry, he's also a backstroker. We were both obviously swim the same events. So we were both kind of vying for a relay spot all year. And at our SEC championships, I made the A final in the 100 back as a freshman, and I didn't have a great swim, and I got 8th. And I'll never forget my coach Matt. He was debating who to put on the relay because I had the faster personal best, but Harry was like Mr. Reliable that day. And I'll never forget he ended up putting Harry on that relay, and it was in one way the most devastating moment because that was my first chance to be on an SEC A relay. They're an automatic medal basically. Our relay was, and it was it was so hard to watch him do that, but at the same time, I just remember thinking, this is my brother. This is my teammate. I got to go out there and get hype for him. So I'm not going to lie. There were some tears shed for a little bit, just by myself. But I just remember I picked up the bootstraps and I was like, let's go get hype. And I just remember watching him, and we were in the stands. And I watch him rip a personal best time leading off that relay. We get silver in that relay, and that time ended up qualifying him for NCAAs, which was incredible.
That's amazing.
And my time also qualified me for NCAAs, so we went into NCAAs together, and that time they put me on the relay for finals at NCAAs, and one of our guys who was traditionally more of a 200 breaststroker had an awesome 100 breaststroke earlier that day, and he also got put on that relay. And it was both of our first A relays ever at UT, and it was the finals of the 400 medley relay at NCAAs, and we both swam really well, and our anchor two guys, the GOATs, Jordan Crooks and Guy Caribe, anchored us to a 6th place finish, which gets us a trophy.
Wow.
So we got put on the podium.
That's amazing.
And it was the coolest thing in the world because I got off the podium, and I just remember walking back over to our team's area, and I had the biggest grin on my face, and I was so happy. And I just remember I hugged my boy Lubomir, who was a breaststroker who had got on that relay for the first time. It was his last swim as a college swimmer.
Wow.
His last 100 breaststroker as a college swimmer, and he got to do it on the relay at NCAAs. And I gave him a big hug, and then I just look up into the stands, and my parents were like crying, looking down at me, and it was just this very emotional moment. And so that's my favorite swimming memory. As a swimmer, my favorite memory though has to be Last Chance 2024. Leading into NCAAs, just watching the culmination of all those swims. There were so many people on the cusp of best times and qualifying for NCAAs, and to watch, swim after swim. I was actually commentating that meet, watching swim after swim with people hitting their personal best, getting under the NCAA cut, making it.
Yeah.
It was just so happy, and I had friends from other teams come into that meet. Seeing them swim so well was just awesome. One of my friends, she finally broke a minute in the 100-yard breaststroke, which is like a huge milestone.
Yeah.
She went 59.99.
Oh my!
She got it by 100th of a second, and I was going crazy on the commentary. One of my other friends broke 20 in the 50 free for the first time, and that's like a huge milestone. So seeing those milestones be achieved was incredible. Two of my friends beat the 500 freestyle school record 2 days in a row. So one of them beat it, and then the following day, the other one beat it by a couple hundredths of a second.
Yeah.
So just seeing all those swims and seeing everyone work together to get these, last second swims to really, really, make their season complete was really, really special. And being a part of that commentating, obviously I'm not on the pool deck, but when those guys watch their swims, those guys and girls watch their swims at the end of the session, the parents at home getting to see it with the excited commentary of like a teammate. I think that was a really, really special opportunity, and I'm so glad I got to do that for the year. And someday I would hope to do more commentary again because I love talking. I've been chatting it up. So
I was going to ask you about that. If obviously when a lot of people retire, they go into the commentary stuff, kind of like Tom Brady and all these athletes. So I was going to ask if you foresee that in your future.
If I had the opportunity, 100%. I actually was given the opportunity to announce the ASUN conference. So the Atlantic Sun Conference Swimming Championships actually happens here in Knoxville.
Oh, wow.
And I got the opportunity to commentate it last year. So if you go to the ASUN Twitter, every race has every finish of the race has my commentary on it. And I got to do a lot of awesome work. I went through all the records of the ASUN, and I compiled fastest times of the year for the conference. And I compiled all this stuff basically like a sports information director does. I basically did all that work leading into this meet so I could be prepared for the commentary. It was hours every day leading into every session, and it was the most worth it work that I've ever done. It was so much fun, and it was super cool to meet all the people that were running it. And if I got the opportunity to do that again, or to do another swim meet someday, 100%. It is the most fun. It is more fun than actually swimming for me. I love the sport. I love everything about it. And doing that commentary was me being able to give back. And it was really, really cool. Awesome experience.
Special. Absolutely. Well, it's been absolutely amazing to have you on the podcast. I'm so grateful for you to come on and talk about your experiences. So many unique stories that you shared and so many unique memories. So I can't thank you enough for coming on. Seriously.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, Grant.
I'm so happy that we were able to meet at the football game under the circumstances that it was.
It was incredible.
But, with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Granted. We're Audi 5000. Peace out.